Well, good day, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about an indicator I developed for myself that I am calling VWAP Plus. Now, I hope that most of you watching this, or all of you watching this, know what VWAP is, because VWAP is probably, well, in my case, it's an indicator I couldn't trade without. It's the most important indicator that I use on my charts. Wikipedia defines VWAP at this link right here, and you can go to that link and read this for yourself. I'm just going to try to highlight and sum this information. And it states that in finance, the volume weighted average price, VWAP, volume weighted average price, is the ratio of the value traded to the total volume traded over a particular time horizon. It's a measure of the average price a stock traded over the trading horizon. Now, whether it be a stock or a future or commodities or a currency, it's all the same. Replace stock with any type of instrument that you trade and it's all the same. It's stating that VWAP is also used as a trading benchmark by investors who aim to be as passive as possible in their execution. Many pension funds, mutual funds all fall into this category. The aim of using VWAP trading targets is to ensure that the trader executing the order does so in line with the volume of the market. We further go down and it says that VWAP is also used in algorithmic trading. Indeed, a broker may guarantee execution of an order at the VWAP and have a computer program enter the orders into the market in order to earn the trader's commission and create profit and loss. This is also called guaranteed VWAP execution. So if you're a large institution or a large investor and you want to place an order for hundreds, thousands of contracts, you can't just arbitrarily say, okay, well, get me in the market for 1,000 contracts of crude right now. That type of volume would move the market in an instrument like that. So rather than that, the broker will say, okay, well, you want to get long in the market right now with 1,000, 10,000 contracts in crude, and we will guarantee you your average price will be around VWAP. So, okay, so the important parts that I get out of this is that VWAP is a measurement of the average price over the total traded volume of whatever time period you're using it for. Now that can be a day, that can be a week, that can be a month, however you want to look at it. Whether you want to look at a full continuous Globex session or you want to look at an RTH session, it's over the given period of time that you tell it to start and end. Secondly, all I have to know is that if this is being used by large institutions, pension funds, mutual funds, hedge funds, anybody that's placing a large volume into the market and they're looking at this, I want to look at this too. The next thing is if algorithmic trading is being based on this, I kind of want to see where that area of interest might be for them as well. So for me, this is probably the most important indicator that I use in my trading on a daily basis. Now I call my indicator HTVWAP Plus, regardless of the name. What we're looking at is we're looking at today's volume weighted average price, or VWAP. And then we're also looking at 3 upper and lower standard deviations of that price. An algorithmic calculation that calculates the standard deviations above and below VWAP. We're also looking at yesterday's. I think yesterday's, in most of the VWAP indicators that I've seen out there, they plot today's values and nothing looks at yesterday's values. And yesterday's values are just as important as today's. They give me yesterday's volume weighted average price, or VWAP. They also give me an upper and a lower first standard deviation that I consider yesterday's value. Now, don't consider what I'm saying as yesterday's value to be the same thing as what you might look at if you were a market profile type trader. Upper and lower value areas. The algorithmic equations to calculate the POC and the VWAP are different. So the value, or the first standard deviation above and below VWAP, will not be the same as the upper and lower value on a volume market profile chart. In any case, we look at yesterday's VWAP. We look at yesterday's upper and lower standard deviations. I plot missed or naked VWAPs of the previous day. We look at 2-day prior VWAPs, 3-day prior VWAPs. I plot regions in between today's standard deviations if you want to see them. Now, all these can be quickly hidden with it. Rather than go over all of these things, I'll come back to this after we show you the indicator. So let's take a look at the indicator itself. Okay, here's a 5-minute crude chart. Now, the information I have is I believe I have 30 days of data loaded on this chart, and my data stops at the close of last Friday or February 7th. So what we're looking at here is our white dotted line here. Let's come here and look at a pointer. Our white dotted line here is VWAP. It's a calculation of the average price for volume over the course starting at the Globex session. Now, this chart, I'm also looking at a continuous Globex chart. So crude starts trading at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time and stops trading at 4:15 the following day. So that is the session that I'm looking at on this chart. You could change this to an RTH chart and start crude at 8 o'clock in the morning and stop it at 4:15, and that would give you the value of the RTH VWAP and yesterday's RTH VWAP. But my indicator must be used on a continuous session template, meaning you cannot have breaks in the middle of the day because I reset my value on session breaks. It's just a limitation of it's how I use this particular indicator. So that's the way it is. We look at today's VWAP as it develops. We look at the standard deviations, 3 standard deviations above and 3 standard deviations below as they develop for the day. So here's my VWAP. Here's my upper standard deviation 1 and my lower standard deviation 1. And I actually, when I look at this, I color that region and consider that value of today. Now, I do that through a drop down, and I could actually come down here and show regions. I could show the middle region and I could fill that in as well. Or I could look at the outer region, or I could turn off the middle and off the inner. And if all I wanted to do was look at the outer regions, I could fill and color them in as well. I personally look at it this way. If you would want to use this indicator and not fill in any region at all, we use our pull down, we use a drop down icon, and we come down and we just turn off show regions, and you would no longer fill that region. So this drop down, and I'll get into explaining all of the features of it, actually has all the settings that are involved in the indicator for a quick and easy access, so that I don't have to go into my indicator properties every time I want to change something. We're looking at our upper second standard deviation, upper third, lower second, lower third. Now, yesterday, this was our upper first standard deviation. This was our lower first standard deviation. This is where VWAP closed the day. At that point in time, we start plotting a line going straight across a continuous line that never moves. I mean, these values were decided at the end of the day. So we're plotting the upper first standard deviation, we're plotting the upper second standard deviation, we're plotting the lower first and the lower second along with yesterday's VWAP. I'm also plotting, if we look at yesterday, or Thursday per se, this was yesterday's or Wednesday's VWAP. We continue this on, and I hope that you can see the difference. Just through styling, we've now changed this to where this is our VWAP from 2 days prior. So I can see VWAP 2 means 2 day prior VWAP. And if I come down here and look a little below, this was 2 day prior VWAP Thursday. It's now 3 day prior VWAP today. So I'm looking at today's VWAP, today's VWAP, yesterday's VWAP, the day before that's VWAP, and the day before that, along with the previous day's upper and lower first standard deviation, upper and lower second. So let's come back over here, and you can see how the lines were. Once these lines are calculated, they will plot the entire day across until the following day, where once we open on Monday, our lower standard deviation, first standard deviation, will start plotting here. Our upper will start plotting here. Yesterday's VWAP will be here, our VWAP 1. VWAP 1 will turn into VWAP 2. VWAP 2 will turn into VWAP 3, and VWAP 3 will just disappear like it did right here. All of these lines and settings are easily hidden through a drop-down icon that I place in NinjaTrader's toolbar. If I use this drop-down icon, I have a multitude of choices that you can select very easily without going into the indicator properties panel. So here it says show VWAP. If we turn that off, the VWAP line will be hidden. It's still there because I can turn it back on or I can turn it off. We can come into the prior VWAPs. So if I didn't want to look at VWAP 3 on my chart, as you can see right here, it was here and the other one was down in here, it no longer displays on my chart. I'll turn that back on, and let's just say that I didn't want to look at any of the three. So they're grouped. Here I say show previous VWAPs. Here I can turn them off individually, or here I can left click and turn them all off in one fair swoop. Or I come back in and turn them all back on. If I don't want to look at my standard deviation lines, I can come down and say show standard deviation lines, and here I can show upper 3, upper 2. I can turn them all on individually, or I can turn them all off through the click of a button. Now I can come down here and I will turn them back on, and I give you another option. There are many times, depending on the chart I'm looking at and depending on what I'm looking at, when it comes to my standard deviation lines, I'm not a huge band person like Bollinger Bands and other kind of bands. They just don't fit my eye real well. I like looking at the levels. But we can see that VWAP and our standard deviations are dynamic during the day. They're developing and changing over the course of the day depending on where price and volume has been trading. Now our yesterday's values are static. They will remain the same the whole course of today. But today's, they're developing. Now I can come down and I've stuck in an option to turn those standard deviations from a hash, which they're currently set in the plot, to an H line or to a line per se. So now instead of looking at bands, I can actually look at lines or levels in my case. Now remember that this line right here, because this is an H line, it's going to go all the way across, all the way back to the beginning of this chart and be a line. And this line is going to be dynamic, so it's going to go up and down as this level changes. I can see through my filled region that this line right here was here and it has gradually gone up and up and up until it's finally here. Now I don't necessarily need to see the band there because I use the region. I can see that this is developing up and up and up, just like my VWAP has gone up and up and up. And I'll just leave that on band since they closed the previous day, and this is the easiest way to look at them. Yesterday's standard deviation. So we're looking at this and this and this and this. If I wanted to turn those off, I can click on those and those no longer will show. And all I'm looking at now is today's. Well, I have my VWAPs on there, but if I were to go back and turn previous VWAPs off, now I'm just looking at what you probably will see as a normal VWAP indicator out there today that you can find pretty much everywhere. The difference is none of them show the previous day's values, and the previous day's values are just as important as today's value. What we're saying, what I look at somewhere in here is that when I start this day today, okay, I consider this our lower standard deviation 1 and our upper standard deviation 2, I consider that yesterday's value. So anytime that I'm trading in between yesterday's value, I could look at that maybe as a range-bound market, or I want to know what these values are because I know through experience that these values are going to be support and resistance. I mean, you can just see that here. We're trading below. Another tidbit here is I use VWAP as my trend indicator. I don't use moving averages. I don't really look at any of that stuff. When we're trading below VWAP and VWAP continues to hold price to the upside, I know that we're trading in a downtrend. Now, when I say, okay, I'm going to talk about trend maybe and say, well, we're in a downtrend. Let's call it a micro trend because I'm looking at a 5-minute chart. I'm an intraday trader. Okay, at the end of the day, I'm not in a position. My trading is normally done between 6 a.m. and 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I'm done. I've either made money that day or I've lost money that day. Now, I am going to look at daily, weekly, monthly, larger time frame charts and take a look at what price is doing and what the bigger picture is. But what's relative and important for me is what is price doing right now in relative to the ranges that I want to trade. Okay, for crude, let's just talk crude here for just a second. Okay, crude might be going up and down, and on a daily chart, it might be in a very strong downtrend or uptrend. Doesn't matter. The problem is crude has an average range of between, let's say 125 to 150 or 60 ticks a day. So it's going to move on an average, let's just say $1.50. I'm just going to say that. It's a little less, a little more, depends on how you average that out, how many days back you look. On average, during that time frame, even if I look at a daily chart and it's on a extremely downtrend, the ranges in crude over the past, let's say 5 or 25 bars can be 50 cents either way. It doesn't matter whether it's going to come, whether it's going down, down, and down. If I come down and I look and VWAP's holding, and let's just say that we're in an uptrend on a large daily chart and on the weekly chart, but I see VWAP holding. Once we break below yesterday's value, I see yesterday's value holding. Once we come back up here and test this area up here, I can get short here at 76 and play this down to 50, which was 2-day prior VWAP, and play this down to 41 and possibly play this all the way down to my 3rd day VWAP for, 76 to 50, 25 ticks, and then another 10 ticks on top of that, and then maybe another 20 ticks on top of that. Just because we're in that uptrend and we see this going large like this doesn't mean that I don't have an opportunity to capture 20, 30, 40 ticks in either direction. Okay, I'm using VWAP on a micro trend as my trend indication. If we're trading below VWAP and VWAP can continually hold, I consider for my trading methodology we're in a downtrend. On the other hand, once we break back above VWAP, come back up. Now, this was a spike right into the open. Looks like this was right about 8 o'clock or the open. They took all these shorts out right here, got back up above VWAP, come back to test lower value in VWAP, and it holds. And now we're back in that uptrend that we just talked about on a daily chart that we showed. Didn't mean that I didn't have the opportunity that I couldn't trade short during that trend. I just have to be aware of my bigger picture and my smaller picture and realize that if my bigger picture is on a uptrend, that even though I'm holding below, I need to be a little more conservative with my targets and be careful to the opposite direction, if that makes any sense at all. Once we get back above VWAP, we test. Look at what we did. We came in, and I'm not even really looking at my charts in these hours, but I am. When I get back in, I'm coming in, and I'm sitting down at my computer around this time, around 5:36, 6:30 in the morning Central Standard Time. And I've seen that it's held VWAP all night long. Well, right now my bias is to the short until it can prove to me or break back above VWAP and hold VWAP in the opposite direction. And that's exactly what it did right here on this day, right before the open. We came in and it finally broke back above VWAP. It comes back down to the previous days and it's holding and it's holding, and it comes right back up to yesterday's lower value. This holds and we get a spike back down. Now, crude's pretty much a bear of an instrument. I don't know how many of you look at it. If you're a novice or a beginning trader, please stay away from the damn instrument. The volatility and the noise in that instrument is extreme compared to an instrument like ES or YM. But in any case, I'm seeing this, and now I'm seeing this bottoming pattern here. I'm seeing this holding. My bias is still kind of to the downside at this point, but I'm not trading the open because of the volatility, and I'm watching price action to see what's going on. Once we break above and we get this spike down and we get these large range, I get a large range bar right here back to the upside. I get back to the upside, all the way up to taking out anybody that might have been short with the stop right above here. Once I get a pullback down into this area and down into VWAP, I'm expecting, if the bulls are going to remain in control, that VWAP is going to hold. Now, that doesn't mean that I might not see a spike of a wick down below VWAP, but I'm expecting the close of this 5-minute bar not to close below VWAP before I change my mind. So I get this big old spike, A lot of people are jumping on. They're chasing this trade thinking it's going up. In my opinion, I'm waiting for that pullback down into this lower value area or down into VWAP to jump on long here, to play it back up to the high, Now, let's just go back to the beginning of the chart. I don't even know what dates these are. It looks like this is the 16th. Okay, now this isn't a full day because my chart doesn't start at Globex, and so I'm not going to look at this day, and I'm not going to look at this day because these values might not be correct because my first day doesn't go back to the open. So the first day that I see that I have a true values are here on starting on, looks like, what would that be? That would be Sunday the 19th, Monday the 20th. If I think about this, I think Monday, yeah, that this is a good time to show you something else. Monday, January 20th, was a holiday. It was a short trading day. It was Martin Luther King Day. We did open on Sunday night at 5 p.m., but the market closed at 12:15 the following day. So even though these values here are good values, it's a holiday. I'm going to skip this. But now the very next day is the 21st. Okay. Because this was a holiday and not a full day of trading, I might not want to look at this day's previous values. Well, I only had a half a day of trading. What I might want to do is combine for that Tuesday, since Monday was the holiday, I might want to combine Monday's values with Friday's values and look at those for this trading day on Tuesday. Now, in the indicator properties themselves, we can come in here to the indicators. We can come down here to VWAP, and I have a holiday set. I have a holiday parameter. So if I were to change this to the 20th, so January 20th of 2014, and I say OK. Now what I've done is say, let's ignore the values. Let's combine the values of this holiday that I just typed in with the previous day so that the value area that I print on the next day and the VWAP that I print on the next day more aligns with what I would consider a full day of trading. But since this holiday, since there's going to be very low volume in here, I myself am going to go back and combine these two dates, and now on this Tuesday I'm going to look at these values versus just the values that this holiday would have gave me. Just wanted to let you know that that is an option. I don't put in here, you know, so Martin Luther King Day and President's Day and what I let you pick and choose. That's kind of the versatility of the indicator. If you want to look at that holiday's value, that's fine. That's default. If you want to put that holiday in there, combine those two values, you have that option too. However you want to look at this. So now I had Friday, I had Monday. Now I'm starting off on Tuesday, and again, I'm not trading these time periods, so I'm just kind of looking. But I'm seeing that price is trading above today's VWAP. Now this, regardless of what I did with the holiday here, would have nothing to do with today's values, just the upper value and the lower value in yesterday's VWAP. So I'm seeing that we start off kind of low, but coming down, consolidates. All of a sudden we're above VWAP. VWAP's holding. VWAP's holding. So now we're in that micro uptrend. We come right back up to what we're considering yesterday's VWAP today, and it looks like it might hold a bit. It did for a minute, and it didn't for a minute. But we can see that this area here looks like there's some significance to it. I'm just going to move on. I see significance in that. Possibly other traders might not, whatever. But we're trading up to, and where did we end up? We traded above VWAP. Here's my uptrend. I want to be careful for playing it down. Not to say that when it came up here to test this area here that we couldn't get short and try to play it down to VWAP if that's what price action was telling us. But now again, I'm during a time period in the market that I don't trade. I don't look at overnight session or Euro session. I'm not interested in it. There's plenty enough opportunities for me from 6 a.m. till 1 in the afternoon that I don't have to sit and look at my charts all the time. I did in the beginning of my career. Now I take a break. You can't look at charts 24/7. Well, you can. I'm just not interested in it because I'm not going to hold anything past the close. So I'm an intraday trader myself when it comes to futures. Okay, so we're finally starting to be in a time period now that I might be sitting down at my desk. It's about 6:30. So now I'm interested in watching price action and what's going on to determine what type of trades I have. By combining these areas, I can see that the value of the last couple days, or what I'm considering yesterday, is here and here, and we're trading above that value area up to the second standard deviation at this point in time. I'm considering a possible short back down into this area right here, but I kind of, again, it's low volume time. We haven't even opened the pit close, so I just want to see what's going to happen. We'll get kind of a denial bar. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to turn those missed pivots off, and I'll explain what those are here. Or not pivots, but VWAP. I'll explain what those are here in a second too. So as we can see, we came right up to value, second standard deviation, and got a pullback down to today's first standard deviation. Now, one way that I also use VWAP is as we're trading up, anything above VWAP I'm considering we're trending upward. Once we get above the first standard deviation, and that first standard deviation continues to hold and we continue to trade in that region there, once we get into this region here and that region holds, I consider that to be more of a strong trend. Now, once it gets above the second standard deviation and that holds, that is an extremely strong trend. Okay, that does not happen very often, but this happens a lot. We're riding VWAP up, bounces off the first to the second to the first, the second to the first, the second to the first. We're still breaking down in here, but a clear indication back here, and again, we're at the wrong time of the day for me to consider this, but it couldn't even get all the way back down to VWAP before it keeps stair-stepping its way up. But once we're getting to here in the middle, here about Euro, prime time in Euro session, that is a strong uptrend. And until we can break down back down into below this first standard deviation and close and show me some confirmation, I have to be extremely careful trading this short. On the other hand, I can see that this was the second standard deviation of the day before. So now that I'm seeing this coming up and I'm seeing a possible head and shoulders pattern, I don't look at patterns like that. I'm just saying it leveled off here, came down, spiked up above it, took these guys out, came back up. This bar couldn't get above here. I want to look at what's going on in here because I am interested in getting this into a short, even though we're in an uptrend, and I want to play this down to the 69 area and then VWAP. Now, I have to remember that VWAP's coming up and up and up, and this is probably, VWAP's going to be up here by the time my price gets there. But if I can go from 98 to 68 for 30 ticks on a couple contracts, that's a good morning for me. So I want to watch what's going on in price. And I'm still not real interested right here. I'm not grabbing nothing. I want to see, oh, okay. So I was just talking about a long. But here's where you go back to price action. Look at the doji that we have here. We have a strong denial, in my opinion. Price came down, took out all of these stops right here, and closed back up above the close or the open of this bar right here. That is a good indication to me that the premise that I wanted to take about getting short is probably off the table, and now I could actually jump into this long right here with the stop below here and at least play this from 84 up to 98, maybe even taking out the highs here up to the next standard deviation. Probably a pretty easy trade. Okay, still another strong denial, right? Not interested in any shorts now. I'm probably long. Now, if I got long right here, my stop would be below the wick. Originally my stop was here. I'm moving it up to here now. Now, I got long here at, let's say 84. I'm looking at this is more of a scalp trade for me because VWAP has nothing to do with price action, but I'm seeing the price action and the consolidation going on here, and I'm seeing the wick action going on here. So even though I'm getting this denial, I don't know that this is going to be a breakout up above 95. I'm hoping so. But I have to consider that I'm here in at 84. I've got about 10 ticks. I want a couple more, but I'm going to take most of my position off here at that line, half of it anyway. Okay, I'm still in, but now we really don't want price below, we don't want price down to 80. So I got in about 84, let's say 85. My stop is still down here around 79. I'm not moving my stop to break even right now. Well, because sure as crap, price will come down here, stop me out, and then it'll go zooming. How many of you do that? How many of you get into a trade, all of a sudden it goes in your direction and you say, well, I'm moving my stop to break even because I don't want to lose. Well, that's a bunch of crap. Yes, I am one of the biggest risk intolerant people out there. But I have to look at price and structure and say that, okay, if you want to put it down here at 81, fine. You come back down here a little lower and you could say 79. Fine. That's still not where your stop really should be, but I understand the risk. But to put it all the way back in here and all this congestion, sure as crap this is going to come down here and stop you out and take off in the other direction. In any case, we're still long. We were looking for a couple more ticks. Okay, we got it. at this point, because of what's going on, I'll probably only have one runner left. And at this point, my stop is still here at, you know, it depends on how conservative and how aggressive you want to be. Worst case, my stop 79. I might even move it up to 81 here at this point. To be honest with you, I don't really want to see it close below this first standard deviation line. Let's come back down here and turn that back on and turn that middle off. And I don't really want to see a close back down into here. So I could really move my stop at this point. I would say it would be okay to move your stop to break even. Why? Because another rule that I might have is I look 2 bars back. I don't want price, once I'm ahead in a trade and I'm unsure if I'm in an area that could very well be resistance, which we are, I don't want price really to come back too far. I have to be aware of that. So putting my stop down here at 86, or, you know, right in that area at this point, after I've already taken my first target, that's different than price moving up and not even getting to your target and moving everything to a break-even standpoint. It's just my opinion. But at this point, I really want to see that take off. Now, see, it didn't. This became major resistance. Now, I should have seen that. I should have seen that in this candle right here. In this candle right here. Okay, looking at price action here now. I should have kind of seen that. This wick comes up, and Crude's an instrument like that. Takes all the stops that were here out. Okay, this candle right here gapped up and closed below its gap. From a price indication, that's kind of a denial to play that back down. Now, I'm not going to sit here and buy VWAP at this point in time. Look at the huge range bar we have right here. Really, what I want this to do is I want this to come back up into this area right in here. I want this to come back up into this area right here so that I can get short with my stop up here above this. Now, it surely bounced off VWAP and boom, took off. Okay. I missed that trade. I just see that huge reversal and I miss that trade completely. But then on the other side, if you're looking at price action and you see this bar here, this hammer bar, the hammer bar took out VWAP, took out this, came down and took out these stops that were sitting right here. Now we mark this up as supply, because now we know that that area right there is a supply area. Demand. There's demand in this area here to drive price up. I'll get rid of that one completely, and I didn't have a trade in here. I kind of expected VWAP to hold, but I didn't expect a big blast off. But then again, this here is Crude open, and in Crude open, you have a huge amount of volatility. So we play this up, and we're just watching what price is doing. Price was riding our first standard deviation up, and finally we get some closes. It comes back up to our previous day's second, can't get any further, does take the little weak stops out, and comes back to VWAP and blast off. It doesn't go too far without coming back down and closing back into what we're considering today's value. Once we get a pull back up here and a price back down to here, I'm looking for a short. I'm looking for a pullback back into this area for a short. And where am I going to short it to? I have an obvious target. I have a target here of right here around the big round number of 95, 98 in VWAP. So if I can get in up here anywhere in this 30, 35 area, my stops here, worst case 47. But I want to see what price action is going to tell me. Once I get back up here to 30, 29, I'm short with the stop of 41 down to VWAP. Okay, I'm in. And there's my VWAP. Okay, this is going to take a lot of, if you haven't watched VWAP and you haven't watched standard deviations and you're not familiar with price action, you have to study. You have to go back to your charts and look and look and look and look and look and watch and be patient. We could, because of what I'm telling you here, not just because of what I'm telling you, because of what you're going to research and test. Once we finally get above the first standard deviation, break well above it, when it comes back and closes into here with confirmation, this area up here should hold again for price to come back down and test VWAP. It happens all the time. So once I saw this blast off, pull back down into this area, come back up and start consolidating, we know that when price comes back up here into this area, we can get short here with our initial stops up here, playing it back down to VWAP. Now, if you play multiple contracts, you have to be out of at least half of your position here and now start adjusting your risk on your other positions down. So if we got in up here around this 30 area, you know, our stop now is 37, or in best case, maybe 33. Not break even. I want to be above these wicks. I probably want to be right above that, the high of that candle right there at 35. That's just me. But I want to see, now I want to watch what price is going to do here. VWAP's been holding the whole day. Okay. It would be very appropriate for you to take your entire position off right here. You just made 30 ticks. So if you had 3 contracts on, you just made $900. Be happy with that. Be done for the day. It's 10 o'clock. Go play golf. Go shovel your driveway. Go do something different. Quit watching. Be patient. Look for your setups. Like we said, if we had runners, where would we have played our next runner? Well, we said that there was demand in this area. So we want to play our runner down here to 69. We have a line, we've had a line drawn on our chart for a target since the beginning of the Globex session. So we just played from 30. Let's just say we were playing 2 contracts. We played from 30 down to the big round number for 30 ticks, and then down to 69 for another 30 ticks. So we got 60 ticks on one, 30 ticks on another. We played 2 contracts. We were risking 15 or 16 each. We were risking 300 to capture 900. That's a 3-to-1 risk reward. Now that's something I kind of do in my head at this point in time too, is that when you're up here saying I'm going to get long, I'm going to get short here, and my stop is going to be up here, I've looked at this long enough to know that if I'm going to get short here and my target's here, and this is 30, that I'm looking at least a 2-to-1 on my first target. I'm getting way off probably the subject necessarily just for VWAP. What I'm trying to show you is the importance of yesterday's values as well as today's. how VWAP holds price, and we can use that as our trend indication. How when it gets above that first standard deviation and rides it up, that we need to be careful until we have strong indication that we're closing back down in to today's value. How you want to combine price action with the values that are being shown on your chart. Take all of that off. We come back over here. We can hide or show anything individually or all together through just a click of the mouse. Now, one thing I want to show you, another thing I want to show you is this line here. We are also, along with this, and we'll follow this line all the way back to the day that it was created. Oh man, when it was created on 1/21. So, and we're on 2/7. So we got to go back all the way to this day here. Oh, this is 1/21. This is back on the day that we were just trading. Well, day before. We open on this day. This was the previous day's upper value, the previous day's upper standard deviation, the previous day's lower. Here's previous day VWAP. We start trading above VWAP, and VWAP's holding the whole day. We get into the morning, it tries to break below it, can't. Tries to break below it, can't get outside of value. Remember what we said, upper and lower value, upper and lower standard deviations are what we're considering today's value. So we're not, right here, this is telling me we're not trending this morning, we're ranging. We're ranging. So buy here, sell here, buy here, sell here, buy here. When you have to, there are 7 different market day types depending on who you talk to and how you look at. And you need to go research that. What kind of day are you in? Are you in a trending day? Are you in a ranging day? Are you in a balanced day? Are you in a double balanced day? What kind of day was yesterday? You need to study. We're not going anywhere. All of a sudden we break out, consolidate, demand in this area right here. We come back to the bottom of here, top of here. Once she breaks out, consolidates. We really, I would have wanted to pull back down to VWAP to get long here. We got above VWAP, it never comes back to get you, and then takes off. Then takes off and rides that first standard deviation all the way up for that strong trend. Was this the day we just traded? No. It looks almost the same, doesn't it? This is what we just traded. We traded this, the consolidation, the breaks back down into the first, comes here, we're playing this to here, we're playing this to here. This is what we just did yesterday. Now, we come back into the very next day, and it's just kind of doing the same thing. Although here, we never really get that break. Rides that first standard deviation all the way up, comes back down, it's holding. Finally, we get a close below, but we really, I guess the difference is we really don't get any kind of confirmation of a close back down into value. And what I mean by that is I don't really get 2 consecutive bars that close below value. Yeah, this closed below value, but the next was above it. Yeah, this closed, but the next was above it. Yeah, this closed, but the next one was above it. Yeah, this closed below, but the next one was above it. So I'm not getting any confirmation in price and candles to tell me that that we're going to hold here, so that when I come back up to this value, that I want to get short back down into here. But where we were going was, this was yesterday's value high, upper standard deviation 1, lower standard deviation 1 in yesterday's VWAP. It's extremely rare that price of today doesn't at least test yesterday's closing VWAP. And when it doesn't, I want to be aware of that. So as we're trading today, at the end of the day today, and in all actuality, probably at the open, I'm drawing that, but at the end of this day, I want to mark this as a missed VWAP. So I know that this whole area, I know through experience that this area right here is demand. Actually, it's a little above it. I could probably even come back up and to say that this area right here, since this was my upper and it really didn't even come down to here, and I'm considering adding missed SD1s or upper and lower SD1s onto this, and I just kind of want to test out what that is. But once I see this, I'm definitely in an uptrend. I don't care whether I'm below VWAP, above VWAP, my bigger trend is up. I couldn't even come down and test that. This is yesterday's. I couldn't even come down and test that yet. But if I'm going to get short, if I'm going to look at getting short, this is a target, this is a target, this is a target, this is a target. Any time that we don't come back and test the previous day's VWAP on the day before is a pretty good indication for me that at least for the next day or two, we're in a move in the opposite direction. And in this case, it looks like we've continued to be, even though there is opportunities in both directions, we have still not come back to test that from 10 days ago. There are selections here to show labels. We're showing these labels right here. If you don't want to look at your labels, turn them off. We're showing price markers. If you don't want to look at your price markers, turn them off. Here at the bottom, I give you a reset all. I go through this and turn them on and turn them off, and there's times I just want to turn everything off. So I can click on that and everything up here goes into the off position, and now I can come back in and turn them on individually of what I might want to see. Or I can come down here and reset them all on, and all of my configuration of whatever I turn on and off is quickly turned back on, and now I can come back up here and decide how I want to look at this. Or I can just middle click this icon completely and hide everything. So now it's all gone. It's still there. All I have to do is middle click again and it's all back. But if I middle click again, it's all gone. I get rid of those price lines. This is a different indicator. It's not really an indicator. It's a tool. It's my drawbar tool, and I would suggest if to take a look at that demonstration video, even though that was the first one of these kind of things I've ever done. Quite wordy, and probably should redo that sometime. Middle click, and it's all back. Where'd my labels and price times go? Oh. Oh, okay. I don't have the labels and the price markers set in with the reset all on and all off, because some of you will not ever want to look at labels. I don't necessarily need labels on my chart because I style and configure my lines through style and color. I don't need a label here because I know what this means. I know that big white dotted line is VWAP. I know that this is my upper standard deviation 1 of today. I know just by looking at how I've styled and colored my lines what they mean. And when I throw other indicators on here, I style those lines and color those lines accordingly. So if I'm looking at price times and I'm looking at my opens and pivots or any other thing that I'm looking at, I style and color each one individually so that I can look at my chart and I don't have to look over here at the label to know what that is. Hell, you need to be playing. If you're using an indicator and you don't know what the line is, then you don't need to be using the indicator. You need to test and play and study some more. In any case, I'll turn these back on. Now, one thing I wanted to show you here is if I hide all of this, that hides everything. And it's going to always hide everything except for my missed VWAPs. I give you the ability to hide with all as it's checked, or I give you the ability to unselect that. So even though I'm hiding the rest of the lines and the values of what this indicator shows, that I can continue to see these regardless. And that's normally the way that my charts are set up, is that even if I hide that, even on my price times and I'm looking at open gaps, or my pivots and I'm looking at open pivots, even if I go back and hide the 4 or 5 indicators that I use on a chart, I still want to see those because this is a major target for me, a long-term major target. If I go into the indicator's properties itself and I look at VWAP, as I mentioned, we can come down here and we can style these lines however we see fit. So for our lower standard deviation 1, if we want to change that from a hash to a line to a H hash to whatever size, all of our plots are individually configured for you to look at them however you want to decide that you want to look at those. Same as the regions. We can use whatever color that you decide that you want to look for your regions in between your standard deviations, and whatever opacity that you want to put in there. Now, those are probably the only 2 types of configurations that you're going to need to come into the indicator properties to change. Most everything, not everything, is available through the drop-down icon. A couple things that might not be is also from a label standpoint. We have an offset. How far do you want this to be placed to the left of our line here? If I change that to 1 and I apply that, my label is going to be right up next to price over here. I tend to like it at 5. Or if I wanted to change the font and the size of the text itself, I could change that from Arial to Times Roman Normal to Times Roman to whatever. Make them 10, make them 8. You have that ability to do that. Oh, and I see one other thing that I need to talk about. All of this stuff from a show hide standpoint is available in the indicator property itself. But there's really no need to come into the properties box to change them because they're all available through the drop-down. The toolbar icon setting, you can also change how you want this to look. Meaning, right now I have this set to Gainsborough so that my default background looks like the rest of my chart. That's what that's what Ninja has. That's what the default is on my Ninja. If I wanted to make this green and show this green, I could. My hidden background means that this is default and this is hidden, so that when I middle click this and it all hides, I change it to dark gray. If you know what, if you want another color, all this, don't worry about any of the other stuff down here. It's a container storage just because that's the way I've got to work around doing some things. Oh, okay, 1 minute data. Two more things. I hope you're still with me here. Sometimes I'm lengthy in my wording and conversation. There's two other unique things that I allow you to do in this indicator. The first one I'll discuss is show weekly values. So what we've done here is now, through the click of a button, and I'll come up here and we'll turn off our SDs, our standard deviation lines. Just through the click of a button, we were looking at daily VWAPs, and then we were looking at our yesterday's values. If you're not an intraday trader and you're a swing trader and you trade and will hold positions over the evening or over the course of days, you probably want to look at this more from a larger target standpoint or from a larger value standpoint. So through my drop down, instead of looking at daily ranges, I'm now looking at weekly ranges. So that if I went back and looked at yet last week's, we traded, and we're seeing our upper and our lower of the week before and how we trade back down. You know, look at these values. You cannot tell me that arbitrarily you could draw a random line on your chart and them have as much significance as these values do. In any case, I come back to here. Oops, let's go all the way to the end of our chart. This was last week's upper, last week's lower, 2 week prior VWAP, last week's VWAP, this VWAP. So if you want to look at bigger ranges, you can. There's major significance in last week's VWAP, just as there is in yesterday's VWAP, and major significance in last week's values. It depends on what kind of trader you are. What are you looking for? Hell, put two of this, just apply the indicator to your chart twice. Put one on a daily and one on a weekly, and now you have both. We'll turn this back to a daily value. I'll open this back up some. And the last thing under the alternative data is use 1 minute data. I've added the ability to use a 1 minute second data series to do all of the calculations. Now you ask, why would I want to do that? Well, the indicator is, in order to calculate VWAP, I don't want to say correctly, but to calculate VWAP precisely, you should be looking at every single tick and the volume of every single tick, and then going back and averaging that from the beginning of the session. Now, the problem with doing that is resources. If you're looking at every single incoming tick and taking the volume and then going back and looking at all of those ticks from the beginning of the day and averaging, the amount of calculations that it takes an extreme amount of resources from your computer. So in order to be as precise as I want to be, need to be, in order not to substitute being a resource hound in my computer, meaning if I were to do that on Crude open and close and news times and volatilities, when there's so much volatility and so much volume coming in on a certain number of ticks, you could find your charts freezing or stalling over particular points in time. That is the last thing that I want on my charts. I never, ever want my chart to stall during high volatility times. So there's kind of a trade-off in how I am using the algorithms and the calculations to calculate VWAP and these values as to how they would be done on every single incoming tick and every single volume of that. What you probably find, if you've used VWAP before, and even if you haven't, you go find somebody else's because, you know, you want it for free or for whatever reason, what you're probably going to find is that if you stick it on a 5-minute chart and you stick it on a 15-minute chart and you stick it on a 60-minute chart and then you go back and stick it on a 377 tick chart, that because of the way that that their algorithms and these indicators are set up, regardless of the fact of if you're probably using calculate on bar close or even true or false, the values of VWAP and its appropriate standard deviations are going to be different on every chart that you're looking at. And that just drove me crazy. When I look at a chart, and I don't care if it's a 5-minute chart, if it's a 60-minute chart, if it's a tick chart, when I look across my charts, I want to see the exact same value on every single chart. I don't want one to be off up. I don't want this 5-minute chart to say 66 and my tick chart to say 65 and my 60-minute to say 67, because actually the larger time that you have your chart, the more off they might be. I can't deal with that. Every chart I look at, I want to see the same values. The closest I've come from a resource efficiency, value, preciseness is to add a 1-minute data series to every chart I'm looking at and use that to make all of the calculations for VWAP that I need. Will it be off possibly a tick or two? In the beginning of the day and the overnight session, very possible. Very possible. By the end of the day, it's going to be real close. You know, could it be off a tick? Maybe two. It could. For me, if you need to be precise down to the tick, then just stick it on a tick chart, set calculate on bar closed false, and let your chart stall during high volatility. Because, well, actually, if you did that with my indicator, the way the algos are set up in this, you probably still wouldn't have that problem. But that chart's going to have different values on it than the rest of your charts, and that's just the way it is. That's just how it works. I suggest that when you use my indicator, this use 1-minute data is set on as a default. And I suggest that you leave it on regardless of the chart that you're trading off of. That way, when you look across your charts, you will always have the same values, and trust me, they will be close enough that you won't even know the difference. So, anything under alternative data, we see refreshes our chart. And I think I've covered all of the drop downs, and I think I've covered more than I expected to cover, and and I hope that you all have gained some information from what I'm showing you. Okay, I think that covers about everything I wanted to cover. Again, I'm sure I talked too much, and this is much more lengthy than it needed to be. I hope some of you might have learned something out of this. I hope you can see some value in what I provide in my indicator that others do not. And even if you decide that you don't want to invest in a retail indicator like mine, I strongly suggest go find a free version of VWAP out there somewhere. Stick it on your chart, play and test, and trust me, this will become an indicator that you can't trade without. Thank you very much for your time. I hope everyone got something out of this, and the best of luck trading.